Helen found the hotel receipt in her husband's jacket pocket. 4 years of Tuesday night stays at the same hotel, charged to a credit card she didn't know existed. After 21 years of marriage, she discovered her husband had been living a double life. Her story isn't just about infidelity, it's about the moment when everything you believed about your life, your marriage, and your partner crumbles in an instant. Helen's journey through betrayal shows how to rebuild trust when the foundation of your world has been destroyed. See, we think affairs are about sex, about attraction, about momentary weakness. But what I learned from Helen's story is that affairs are about deception, the systematic destruction of trust through lies, manipulation, and double lives that can last for years without detection. Helen thought she knew her husband after 21 years of marriage, but that hotel receipt revealed that the man she'd been sleeping next to every night was a stranger who had mastered the art of living two completely different lives. Let me tell you about Helen Martinez from Phoenix. She's 48 years old, works as a school administrator, married to David for 21 years, mother to 2 teenagers, Alex, 17, and Maria, 15. For over 2 decades, Helen thought she was living the American dream. Helen and David met in their late 20s, married after a 2-year courtship, built a life that seemed solid and secure. David worked in sales, traveled occasionally for business, but was home most evenings for family dinners. They had their routines, Saturday morning coffee, Sunday family activities, annual vacations to the same lake house. We weren't passionate like teenagers, but we were stable, Helen tells me. We talked about our days, made decisions together, supported each other's goals. I thought we had grown into the kind of mature love that lasts forever. Helen describes their marriage as comfortable and predictable. David was a good provider, involved father, reliable husband. He remembered anniversaries, helped with household tasks, attended the kids' school events. There were no major fights, no obvious red flags, no signs of unhappiness. David was consistent, Helen explains. Same morning routine, same work schedule, same evening habits. He'd come home, have dinner with the family, help Alex with homework, watch TV with me, go to bed at the same time every night. The only irregularity was David's Tuesday night routine, what he called his networking meetings with other sales professionals. Every Tuesday for the past 4 years, David would leave after dinner, return around 11 p.m., and explain that maintaining professional relationships was crucial for his career success. I never questioned the Tuesday meetings, Helen admits. David was ambitious about his career, and networking made sense for someone in sales. I trusted him completely. That trust would prove to be devastating. The discovery happened by accident. Helen was taking David's suit to the dry cleaner and found a hotel receipt in his jacket pocket. Not unusual since David occasionally traveled for work. But this receipt was for a local hotel, dated on a Tuesday night for a room that had been booked monthly for the past 4 years. My first thought was that it was a mistake, Helen recalls. Why would David need a hotel room in our own city? Maybe it was for an out-of-town client or a company event I'd forgotten about. But Helen's curiosity was aroused. She checked their joint credit card statements and found no charges for local hotels. The receipt showed payment on a credit card she didn't recognize, an account in David's name that she didn't know existed. That's when my stomach started churning, Helen says. A secret credit card, monthly hotel stays on Tuesday nights, charges going back 4 years. I knew what this meant, but I couldn't accept it. Helen spent the next week investigating. She called the hotel pretending to confirm a reservation for David Martinez. The desk clerk cheerfully confirmed his regular monthly booking, same room, same Tuesday nights, often accompanied by a lovely woman with dark hair. Helen checked David's phone records online and found hundreds of calls and texts to a number she didn't recognize. She reverse searched the number and discovered it belonged to Rebecca Santos, a 34-year-old marketing coordinator. I sat in my kitchen staring at Rebecca's social media profile, Helen remembers. She was beautiful, younger than me, and her photos showed her at restaurants I recognized, places David had claimed were business dinners where phones weren't allowed. The final devastating piece came when Helen found photos on Rebecca's social media showing her with a 2-year-old daughter who looked exactly like David. Helen confronted David that Tuesday evening when he returned from his networking meeting. She placed a hotel receipt, phone records, and printed social media photos on the kitchen table. I didn't yell or scream, Helen recalls. I just said, David, we need to talk about Rebecca and your daughter. David's face went white. For a moment, he looked like he might deny everything. Then he collapsed into a chair and put his head in his hands. The worst part wasn't learning about the affair, Helen says. It was watching David explain how he'd systematically lied to me for 4 years. Every Tuesday, every business trip, every late night at the office, all calculated deceptions. David's confession was devastating. The affair had started as a casual relationship but had evolved into what David described as real love. Rebecca knew about Helen and the children but believed David was planning to leave his marriage. The child was indeed David's, and he'd been financially supporting both Rebecca and his daughter while telling Helen their budget was tight. David looked me in the eye and said, "I love you both, but differently. Rebecca gives me excitement and passion. You give me stability and history. I didn't want to choose," Helen recounts. Helen realized that David hadn't just been unfaithful. He'd been living as two different people, the reliable family man at home and the passionate lover with Rebecca. The man I'd been married to for 21 years was a performance, Helen says. I didn't know who the real David was or if he even knew himself. When Helen called me 2 days after the confrontation, I heard something I recognized, the voice of someone whose entire reality had been shattered by betrayal. Helen, I told her, you're not just dealing with infidelity. You're dealing with the discovery that your marriage, as you understood it, never actually existed. David's deception was so complete that you're questioning everything you thought you knew about your life. I shared with her something I learned about betrayal trauma. When someone lies to you consistently for years, it doesn't just break your trust in them, it breaks your trust in your own judgment. You're wondering how you could have been so blind, but that's not your failure. But I also understood her deepest pain. You're mourning two losses, the marriage you thought you had and the man you thought David was. Both of those things are gone and you have every right to grieve them. I explained to Helen the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Forgiving David is about freeing yourself from the poison of hatred and resentment, but reconciliation requires David to prove he's worthy of trust again, and that's a process that could take years, if it's even possible. Helen asked me how she could ever trust anyone again after being so completely deceived. I told her David's capacity for deception says nothing about your worth or your ability to judge character. Some people are expert manipulators, and their success at lying doesn't make you foolish for believing them. Over the next 6 months, Helen and I worked together on what I call betrayal recovery, healing from deception trauma while making decisions about your future. First, we addressed her immediate safety and health. You need STD testing, access to financial records, and legal consultation. Betrayal isn't just emotional, it has practical consequences that require immediate attention. Helen discovered that David's secret spending had affected their joint finances. The money for his double life had come from their children's college funds and their retirement savings. Second, we worked on processing the trauma of systematic deception. You lived in a false reality for 4 years. That kind of psychological manipulation creates trauma similar to other forms of abuse. Your healing needs to address both the infidelity and the gaslighting. Helen started individual therapy specifically focused on betrayal trauma while also attending support groups for spouses of unfaithful partners. Third, we focused on rebuilding her sense of self. For 21 years, your identity was partly defined by being David's wife. Now you need to remember who Helen is as an individual, separate from any relationship. 9 months after discovering David's affair, Helen made a decision that surprised everyone. She chose divorce not because of anger, but because of clarity. I realized that David wasn't just unfaithful, he was a fundamentally deceptive person, Helen explains. Even during counseling, even when trying to rebuild trust, I caught him in small lies about daily things. He couldn't be honest about anything. The breakthrough came when Helen realized she was stronger single than she had ever been married to someone she couldn't trust. I stopped waiting for David to prove he could be trustworthy, Helen says. I started focusing on building a life where I didn't need anyone else's honesty to feel secure. Helen's divorce was difficult but not devastating. She discovered resources and strengths she never knew she had. Within a year of the divorce, Helen received a significant settlement, including David's retirement accounts. She bought a smaller house that she loved and could afford independently. Alex and Maria adjusted well to split custody and actually appreciated their parents' honesty about the divorce. Helen returned to graduate school to pursue a master's degree in educational leadership. She started dating again, but with clear boundaries and no urgency to remarry. Helen also started volunteering with a local organization that supports women going through divorce, helping them navigate the practical and emotional challenges of rebuilding their lives. What Helen taught me through her betrayal recovery is that infidelity reveals character, both your partner's capacity for deception and your own capacity for resilience. Here's what every person facing betrayal needs to know. First, systematic deception over years is not a mistake or moment of weakness. It's a pattern of behavior that reveals fundamental character issues. Trust your recognition of this pattern. Second, your failure to detect ongoing lies doesn't make you naive or stupid. It makes you trusting. Some people are expert manipulators, and their success at deception is not your failure. Third, betrayal trauma is real psychological trauma. The discovery that your reality was manufactured requires professional help to process and heal from. Fourth, you cannot rebuild trust with someone who continues lying, even about small things. Trustworthiness is demonstrated through consistent honesty in all areas, not just the big issues. Fifth, forgiveness is for your healing, not your partner's comfort. You can forgive someone and still choose not to remain in relationship with them. Sixth, your children can handle divorce better than they can handle living with parents who don't trust each other. Honest separation is healthier than dishonest togetherness. Seventh, being single is better than being in a relationship where you constantly question reality. Peace of mind is worth more than the appearance of marriage. Eighth, your partner's affair was not about your inadequacy. It was about their character. You cannot prevent someone from cheating by being a better spouse. If you're facing betrayal right now, remember what Helen learned. Your partner's deception says everything about their character and nothing about your worth. The person who systematically lied to you for years has damaged their own integrity more than they've damaged your life. You can heal, rebuild, and thrive. They will carry the consequences of their deception into every future relationship. Helen thought discovering David's affair was the worst thing that could happen to her marriage. Instead, it became the catalyst for building a life based on truth instead of lies. She went from being deceived to being empowered, from being betrayed to being liberated, from questioning her judgment to trusting her instincts. That's not just surviving infidelity, that's transforming through betrayal. Remember this, someone else's capacity for deception doesn't reflect your capacity for love, trust, or judgment. Their betrayal is about their character deficits, not your relationship inadequacies. Helen learned what every betrayed spouse needs to learn. You cannot love someone into being trustworthy, but you can love yourself enough to require honesty as the foundation of any relationship. Y'all remember that. Your peace of mind is more valuable than your marriage certificate. Your emotional safety is more important than your relationship status. When someone shows you through their actions that they are capable of systematic deception, believe them the first time and choose accordingly.